Date manipulations in Totum in date processing table. Here are lots of examples. We will start with the simplest one. This field is of type date, it has a calendar icon. We see here the date, and we use the code to take the current date. Save. What do we see here? The current date. If we want to specify the time, then as an example the field date time is the same type of field date, but it has an additional parameter, date time. And here we take not now date, but now date time. That is the current date and the current time. Let's go out. Everything is simple with this. This default display format is set for the schema. For English one, for Russian another. And it can be overridden here in System Tables, Settings and Crohn's, Settings. There's a numbers format setting here, and there's dates format. These are the general default formatting settings. You will now see what MDY is. If we want to override this format in some field, here's a field here, custom format. Then what we do is we turn on this parameter here, change the format, and here we write what we want to output. Here we use special characters. You can look them up in the documentation, for example. D is for day, M small is the month, Y big is the 4 digits of the year, Y small is the last 2 digits of the year, H is for hours, I is for minutes. These characters will be replaced by the corresponding value in this string. So now we have H, I threw a colon here, and they're outputting 16:24. But we can easily replace this with the format H-I, and we will have here 16-24. That is, the letters in this line here are changed to the corresponding value. Which ones you can see in the documentation for this parameter. How to call the documentation, click here on this question mark. Okay, here we only have the minutes. And for example, if we want to store with seconds? With seconds, the date field does not store the value and does not display it that way. Where else can we store the date? It can be set not only in a field of type date, but also, for example, it can be written in a string. And here we have code that takes the date with seconds using now date time seconds, and here we see it that way. The format here is not the same as the default format for the schema. And there are no display options. We see Y, which is the year, completely, -M, month, -D, date with a leading 0, space and then hours, minutes, seconds separated by a colon. And if we look by right-clicking, for example, on fields like date, we see that the same YMDHI format is used inside here, or for date simply in YMD. That is, the date field internally stores the date as a string. This is the YMD format. Why exactly in this format? Because this format allows you to compare dates with each other. More or less can easily be understood by simply comparing the strings. This date is later or this date is earlier. If you want to compare dates with each other, put them in this format. If they are stored somewhere in strings or came from the outside, and you store it in a string field in this format, then you have to make sure to put everything in this YMD format. How can this be used? For example, we want to count the first day of the month from the current date. How do we do that? There is a function, dateFormat. If we left-click twice on the function we will get a tooltip. From there you can easily go to the function's documentation. In some browsers, like Chrome, right-clicking works. Right now I'm on Firefox. And it doesn't work here, Firefox doesn't track the corresponding event. What does it do? It takes the date, we give it the current date. And this is where we can set the output format. We say YM, and instead of D we say 1. So what happens? It substitutes instead of YM from the current date takes the appropriate value. Instead of D, it takes 1, and we have the first of the month, and here we have 20, 21, 11, 1. How do we calculate the first day of the next month? So now that I'm recording this video, month 11, we need to get the date of the first day of the next month, no matter what day of the month we have now. What are we doing here? We do a date add, that is, we calculate the first day of the current month the way we have already done, and we add the number of days in the current month to it. In date format, the number of days is T small. We set the format to T and it will return the number of days in the month to which the date passed in the date refers. We add the number of days in that month to the first day of the month and get the first day of the next month. And here we need to set the output format. We can set it right away as needed. For example, the name of the month or day of the week, so that it says Monday, Tuesday or Wednesday, depending on the date. But here we output in YMD. How to get the last day of the current month? It is very simple. We can subtract one day from the number of days of the month. The result of this function is just a number, and then we will get the last day of the current month. Great. This is just a very commonly used formula. You can just copy it and use it in your projects. Well, here is an example when we output not the date, but the representation into the string. For example, we want to display the day of the week of the current date in text format. This is dbig, and there are other options. We set it and here we see Tuesday as the work of the code. Now just compare the dates. There is a list of letters, each of which corresponds to a date and time. Here we have several different days. The 29th, the 30th, and the 31st. The field here is the date. It is exactly the date with time. That is, we have a YMDHI value written inside, but we want to compare it with the date. For example, we have select date, a field in which we simply set the date. So we have the date in the format YMD. This is it without time. And we want to choose by this date which rows with which letters contain the corresponding date. Here we have a code. We're doing a select of this field with the letters from the current table. If we just write date time row equals select date, that is this field in the footer, it won't work, because the datetime field value does not equal the date-only field value in any way. So we use the following comparison. We calculate via date format the beginning of the day. We take f select date and the day starts at 00. And we calculate the end of the day. That is, we again take the date we want to search for and convert it to the same day, but with a time of 23:59. And compare already more or equal to the beginning of the day and less or equal to the end of the day. Sorting. Here sorting is not important at all, but just in case, to be more readable, I sorted in ascending order of letters. Let's see what we have. Here we have the 30th number, and here we have DEF. We have them in the 30th date, so let's change it to 29. Now, this is recalculated, and we see ABC as a result of this code. It's quite a lot about dates, but it's very common. Almost all of them. These are the cases that are used in one form or another, and combinations of them are also used. And I would like you to practice normally, examine dates and dates with time. That is, experiment with it well and then move on to the next video.